Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so happy you can be here today. Healthcare workers across the state are sounding the alarm on a staffing crisis. New Jersey's largest union of healthcare workers says healthcare companies have been cutting staff, and as a result, they're losing medical professionals to burnout and stress. HPAE, which is Health Professionals and Allied Employees Union, their first vice president, Barbara Rosen, she's standing by. First, though, government can really have a big impact on small business. New Jersey's breweries say there's so many statewide restrictions, it is difficult sometimes to do business in the Garden State. Joining me now is Charles, also known as Chuck Aaron from Jersey Girl Brewing in Mount Olive. Chuck, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Last July, there were 18 state restrictions imposed on breweries, and they impact everything from events, food, and even what you can show on TV, on your TV screen. So can you tell us a little bit about the restrictions you're facing?
Yeah, they're significant. And I appreciate the question. The original special ruling was launched back in 2019. It was repealed pretty quickly with COVID and all the activity that was going on at the time. It was the right thing to do. This past July, last July, when our licenses were reissued, all of us were surprised to find the series of special rulings that were put against our license that suddenly changed the entire way we had to operate our businesses, limiting, as you said, entertainment, number of TVs, size of TVs, how many TVs, what kind of snacks we could serve or not serve, food, the impact there. But they're so restrictive on us as a business based on what we had already set a course on doing with our customers as they were coming out to visit the breweries.
Yeah, well, can you talk a little bit about the impact these restrictions have had on local breweries? I imagine some have had to close their doors.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a trend that's happening right now. We just had another one announced they were closing just 2 days ago. High Rail Brewing just closed. I know that there are a number for sale right now. Unfortunately, that's such a sad metrics when you think about how far craft beer has come in the last 10 to 12 years.
Yeah. Well, can you talk about why? Why so many restrictions? Who or what is behind all of these new rules?
So the ABC issued the rules against the breweries. I think there's a lot of motivation and a lot of interest from other lobbying groups to, in their opinion, create a more fair marketplace. They see breweries as a disruption to their business, a disruption to their license, and in lobbying the ABC, convinced the ABC to put the restrictions on that would, in the ABC's words, would help differentiate between the license holders and what's allowed at each location.
Yeah,
We took the brunt of the hit.
Yeah, Anheuser-Busch based in New Jersey. But are most of the New Jersey breweries locally owned, small businesses?
They are. We're mostly family-owned businesses. We're not. I'm trying to think through the list of the 140 or so breweries that are open right now. I can't think of any that are owned by a major holding company or held by a macro brewery. We're all family people. We all have families at home. We hire locally. We're good to our employees in terms of as many benefits as we can provide. We do provide where possible. And I think that's what makes us a fun community business. In some areas where the town was more depressed or had a lot of open real estate available, breweries moved in, took that space, and have reinvented the downtown in New Jersey. And it's been really positively received by the consumers.
Right, especially in this day and age where a lot of people can't afford vacations, they go closer to home. And I can't imagine what it's like as a small business owner recovering from all the COVID shutdowns and then dealing with inflations, and then trying to make money while you're trying to stay in compliance with so many rules.
Consumers, I think what gets lost here is the consumer voice. People like to go out and do things. Craft breweries had become a destination for many New Jersey families who couldn't get out. They wanted to grab their kids, they wanted to grab their dog, go to a brewery. have a nice evening out. We don't serve food. We never were able to sell food other than prepackaged snacks. So they knew that when they came to the brewery with their family and friends, they would order food locally. So the local restaurants would start to benefit. The other local businesses, as they're in the town, they'll go shopping and support the other businesses. And I think that's the synergy that the craft breweries were creating in their towns. With the regulations, suddenly you look at a consumer and you're saying, okay, well, you can go to the brewery, but we've limited what the breweries can do. So now we're limiting what you as a consumer can do. And that's really who suffers in the long run are the consumers that are looking for choice, looking to go out and do something. And they're being told by the ABC through the licensing of the breweries, these are things you can no longer do. And if you're doing them, you can only do so many a year. So consumers have, and I'll speak on my own, but I know that I've talked to a lot of other breweries. We're bearing the brunt of it because now a lot of people are looking at other things to do other than come to breweries. I know some breweries, as I said before, are closing. They can't afford to stay open, but also the consumers are making choices to do other things and not patronizing the breweries at the same rate they were even pre-COVID.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people, they just want to watch their favorite game. They want to watch a game and they want to be around other people, right? And there are even restrictions on how many TVs. I mean, what is that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You never think that the ABC's job is to regulate the number of TVs that you have in your sample room or the size of those TVs, which even goes to another micro level that you can't imagine. So you can only have two TVs in the sample room, no larger than 65 inches each on the diagonal. And they're very specific to say on the diagonal. So, and everybody who hears the rule says the same or has the same reaction as you, which is that's just a little bit far-fetching or silly, even just downright silly.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
And the consumers don't either. And in mass, they got together in support of the craft brewers and started writing letters to senators and assemblymen, governor's office, in support of craft breweries to remove these regulations and put legislation in place that will help our industry grow. And, in a short amount of time, we got to 140 breweries. I can imagine if the state supported us through proper legislation, how much New Jersey would benefit from craft beer.
Yeah, and I guess that's a fine line, when you look at what's being done on the state level to help, because you don't want the state to overmanage, but at some point you really do you need some help. So is there anything that you're asking specifically from lawmakers, anybody who you've reached out to who has been receptive? Where are you in that process?
So we have a legislation committee and we have an executive director their job is to meet weekly and talk to our legislators, our assemblymen, our senators, talk to the people who have the power to create change. We have a lot of positive momentum. There's a bill out by Vin Gopal right now, the senator, that is in whole everything that we're looking for in helping the breweries get back on their feet. It involves unlimited events. It involves unlimited offsite events. It allows us to do the things that the ABC is deemed restrictive on our businesses. A lot of us are, we've got our entire livelihoods tied up into this. The regulations are, it's unfair that the breweries have been identified in this way and singled out in this way. But we have great support from legislation. We have great support from the Assembly. We're trying to get it pushed through for July 1st. July 1st is, as I said before, when our licenses get reissued for this year, which we have to renew every year. Last year, the conditions were attached to that license being issued. This year, we're hoping that the legislators put in new legislation to allow the ABC to remove those so that we can get back on track and start growing again as an industry.
Yeah, and small businesses are the backbone of a community of business in New Jersey. I mean, and what's more Jersey than Jersey Girl? Can you talk a little bit about your particular business and how you've been impacted?
Sure. It started a few years ago. We are 7 years old, actually, last weekend, I'm excited to say. We've been open. We've been serving New Jersey, Pennsylvania, some movement into New York in the short term coming up. So we're excited to be in the tri-state area and distributed. We have a small sample room that's was a quiet warehouse area of Mount Olive, New Jersey. The buildings around us weren't occupied when we moved in. Within the first year of moving in, other businesses saw the benefit of doing business in this part of town, and all of the buildings around us are occupied. And so much so, the landlord even says that they continue to get calls about opportunities to rent in these buildings. And I think that's the same thing you'll hear a lot from other brewery owners where they went into these depressed areas and now they're flourishing because they draw attention. People realize those parts of town exist and they want to be part of it. Our business we're one of the larger breweries in New Jersey. Our tanks can hold, fermentation tanks can hold somewhere north of 140,000 pints of beer each month. We're called a 30-barrel brew house. So we brew about 7,500 pints of beer every time we brew. We're lucky enough to be able to secure a canning line. So that gives us the ability to package directly into cans or into kegs and meet both what we call the on-premise or off-premise type businesses.
Yeah. And, to borrow a phrase from Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And not only are they coming to your breweries, but other businesses are beginning to come in and because New Jersey lost so much many years ago. Trenton makes the world take so many manufacturing jobs left. Do you see businesses like yours, almost really revitalizing communities?
Well, you look at the number of employees each brewery brings in New Jersey. It's a tremendous number. You look at the tax revenue that's generated from the sale of alcohol at the breweries. You look at the ABC, who through brand registration, license renewals, license issuing, are generating income from the businesses. We're a destination, like you said, and we don't do it alone. I have T-shirts, we have glassware that we buy from local suppliers that we sell here at the brewery, a lot of branded items. We do become a destination. We're trying to continue to do that in spite of the regulations that are against us, the special rulings. In spite of that, we have people come out, but it's a fraction of what it was, that's for sure. We built it. We just need to ask that the ABC get out of the way and let people start coming back the way that they enjoy our businesses.
Yeah, and again, what you just touched on too, other small businesses, even merchandise. You've got merch, Jersey Girl merch, yeah. And that benefits other small businesses.
It does. We're not. I'll say we're not the smallest brewery in New Jersey. This is just our sample room. We have 10,000 square feet indoors that we rent monthly. It's a large space, and we use quite a bit of it for the production side, on the beer production side, Monday through Friday. On the weekends, we try to use the space to invite people in to have special parties or private events, things like that, where they can come out to their favorite brewery, Jersey Girl, and bring their friends and have a party, celebrate those big milestones in life. I was really happy that we had a couple who got married here at the brewery last summer. So I think that's the kind of business model that we've created across New Jersey. We are truly part of people's lives. Again, with the regulations, it's making it hard for us to continue to do those things.
Well, from where I'm sitting, it looks absolutely like a beautiful, beautiful brewery. And Chuck, we thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Cheers, I should say.
Cheers. Thank you very much for the time today. I appreciate it, Laura.
Healthcare workers across the country and here in New Jersey, they were the ones on the front lines during the COVID pandemic, gaining praise from patients, politicians, and the public. But as COVID begins to fade, New Jersey's largest union of healthcare workers, HPAE, they say staffing is a big concern, and they're looking to the state legislature for help. Joining me now is HPAE First Vice President Barbara Rosen. Barbara, it's good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you too, and thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, Barbara, HPAE recently put together a report called Code Red, Understaffed, Overworked, Unsafe for Everybody. So what can you tell me about what you found?
Understaffing in our hospitals has been an issue for a very long time, but it's been greatly exacerbated through the pandemic. During the pandemic, we saw a resignation of nurses. Many got sick, some have died. And what we have found with an independent survey that we have conducted across the state in 2022 is that 30% of nurses left the field. And of the remaining 70% or so, they're considering leaving.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. So you've got a third of nurses who have worked in hospitals left in the past 3 years. So what is it like now working as a nurse in a hospital? And are they saying why they're leaving?
what we have found in our survey that the main reason for leaving was understaffing. The work conditions are unbearable in the hospitals for a nurse right now. The second reason was burnout, and following that was wages on
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
nurses feel their license are in jeopardy at the end of a shift. They don't feel like they've done all that they can for their patients. Some of the ratios are really high with patients. And you can't be in two places or three places or nine places all at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's just a very high level of frustration.
Yeah. So when you're
Addi-
talking, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
I mean, additionally, through the pandemic and probably as a result of understaffing, violence in the hospitals has increased quite a bit. So
Well, what do you mean? What are those factors that are causing nurses to get out when you're talking about violence in the hospitals?
we have patients either verbally or physically abusing the healthcare staff. We have seen even patient to patient violence increasing in the hospitals right now.
So it's so are people there? They're sick. They need help. There just aren't enough nurses to go around. Is that what I'm hearing? Is it a little bit of a vicious cycle?
A vicious cycle, and that's exactly it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we find that our solution is to have some kind of ratios.
Okay.
It's worked in California. The research has shown that the patient outcomes are much better with ratios. We will hear from our hospitals and the hospital association that ratios don't work because they need flexibility.
Uh,
And our answer to that is they've always had flexibility.
yeah.
We're just reducing their flexibility to put it at very unsafe levels for our patients.
Yeah, can we get a little into this legislation that is proposed? It's called
Mhm.
NJS 304, Senate Bill 304. So, can you tell us a little bit about the bill and what it would do if it's passed?
So a little bit about the bill is that would set ratios in specific areas in the hospital, like on a med surg unit, on a pediatric unit, and in the ICU to ensure, that a nurse had some level of a safe assignment for the day. So our levels would be like, no more than 6 patients in med surg.
Yeah. Well, and also I would imagine, is there a shortage? Are doctors also being stretched thin, and therefore are they having to take on some of the other responsibilities of other personnel in the hospital?
Doctors,
Yes.
I can't answer on, but I could tell you that nurses have to take on other responsibilities because of the lack of ancillary staff.
Yeah, that's probably how that's probably how I should have phrased that question. Yeah, let's talk about the ancillary stuff and then how everything ultimately so much usually will by default fall on the nurse.
Exactly. Everything falls on the nurse.
Yeah, yeah. So what would you say to somebody who says staffing that shouldn't be decided, or it should be decided by hospitals, not by the government, because you're going to be in Trenton and you're going to be talking about this. So what do you say when people say no, that's a decision a hospital needs to make?
The hospitals haven't been able to conduct it in a manner that's safe, and it's at a point where it's need legislation. on it to have safe levels. I mean, we've seen the same thing happen in our nursing homes. And New Jersey has had a ratio now in nursing homes, and the same has to be legislated for hospitals.
Yeah, and for people who are saying, I'm not comfortable with certain guidelines from the government, you're saying there's going to be something built into where there is some flexibility because emergencies happen. People call out sick.
There should be a contingency plan to deal with that, right? Because ultimately, it's the patient at the bedside that suffers from it.
Right.
Whether it's a float pool, they've been using a lot of agency nurses. And, the research on staffing is very clear. I mean, there's a lot of new research on it. Clearly, adequate staffing of nurses, it has like implications, like we've seen reduced pressure sores, reduced mortality rates, less medication errors, less hospital-acquired infections and ventilator pneumonias, urinary tract infections, readmissions. It goes on and on and on of how beneficial adequate staffing is in the hospital.
Barbara, anyone who's been a patient knows those nurses are the ones who see you first when you're getting checked into the doctor. They're the ones checking in on you in the hospital. They've got sometimes a better bird's eye view of how the patient is doing than some of the doctors and other specialists. And, to be spread so thin, ultimately it sounds like it can cause a lot more problems and a lot more complications, longer hospital stays, or even, God forbid, missed diagnoses.
Absolutely. And, even besides that, just to have the nurse there to comfort the patient, right? To answer questions, to interact with the family. I mean, time isn't allowing that on their shifts anymore. And it's adding to the nurses' frustration of working. I mean, nurses are probably the most compassionate people on the planet. And when you leave your shift knowing that you didn't do everything that you possibly can for the people that are under your care, it leads to burnout.
That's a really good point about the emotional toll, not just the physical toll, but the emotional toll. What are you hearing from some of your members?
Just that, they're just totally burnt out. They say they feel like they're almost jeopardizing patients that they're totally responsible for under conditions that are not under their control. If you have 9 patients, you can't be every place at the same time, and you can't even, see the patients for any great length of time. You have to keep moving, and,
Yeah.
it's just untenable.
It sounds almost like, when the pandemic was first unfolding, we started in many areas, and certainly healthcare, operating at an emergency level, right? And in no way is that good to be able to stay at that level. Is that what it feels like on a day-to-day basis, that it's still operating as an emergency stopgap measure as opposed to what it should be, and what it should be? And I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, every unit is a little different. Every hospital is a little different. I mean, we're seeing our worst effects probably in our hospital's emergency rooms right now, and that's probably how it still feels like it was operating under what we call code red. Situations that are totally untenable.
Yeah, well, you're holding a rally coming up soon in Trenton. What are the messages that you hope to convey?
The messages are to our lawmakers, they're to the public, that nursing ratios are needed now, that the lawmakers have to step in and control the situation in the hospitals, because whatever the hospitals are doing now to provide staffing is not working on it. They do have measures right now to increase the recruitment into nursing programs in colleges, but without having the retention factor of keeping the nurses that are already there at the bedside, or keeping new nurse graduates in the field is like filling a bucket that has a hole in it.
That is a great point. It's not just about retaining the ones you have, but ensuring those who are in school, because there are plenty of people in school, that they actually go into the field and they don't stop before they start.
Right. And what our survey found is that the most likely ones to leave the profession are nurses that have been in the profession from 1 to 5 years. So our new nurses are exiting as fast as they're entering into the profession, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
We need to take measures to keep them at the bedside, and that is with workable assignments that give the best care to our patients.
Well, Barbara, we thank you for coming on the show and talking to us. We'd love to be able to catch up and touch base after the rally and see how this legislation progresses. Thank you, Barbara, for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And we thank you for joining us on New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we look forward to seeing you back here next time.